The grand convocation hall pulsed with quiet energy, a monument to 1,000 species, united in their judgment. High above, on a floating platform, a single human stood surrounded. His face was bruised, his title stripped away. They called him Designate 7. He was the last man to speak for a species already condemned. But what happens when you push a species to the edge of extinction? What if the cage you built was not a prison, but a forge? Exiled by the Galactic Council, humanity chose domination over defeat. Before the story begins, subscribe to the channel for more tales of humanity's defiance, and activate notifications so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's begin the story. The room stank of arrogance. Every species gathered in the grand convocation hall of the Citadel conglomerate carried that same air, like they'd already written humanity off. They were just here to make it official. The shimmering blue walls pulsed with quiet energy, a silent testament to 1,000 years of enforced peace. High above, a single human stood on a floating platform, surrounded by hundreds of delegates. His name was once Elias Vance. Not anymore. They stripped that from him when Earth was banished. The last man to speak for humanity was now called Designate 7. That was the only title the conglomerate allowed him, after what they called the Terran Rebellion. His face was still bruised from the last interrogation. But his eyes, those eyes didn't flinch. He scanned the assembly. The gelatinous acarans, floating in their nutrient tanks. The skeletal thrax, their bones clicking with silent judgment. The smug-faced Zoran bureaucrats, who barely masked their disgust. They had all come to witness a funeral, but they didn't know what was truly dying. "You have committed crimes against interstellar order," a voice boomed from the dais. It belonged to the Vlach Dominion speaker, a creature that looked like a pile of scorched bones welded together with wires. "You spread your defiance like a disease. You breed chaos. Your technology, your biology, your hunger for war. It must be quarantined." There wasn't a vote. Not really. Just a long, expectant silence. Then a shimmering flash as a symbol blazed in the air above Designate 7's head. Exile. The decree was absolute. They stripped Earth of all trade, closed its star lanes, and passed a blockade law. No contact. No aid. Earth was now officially designated a feral world. Designate 7 stood still. His fists were clenched so tightly his nails cut into his palms. He let the pain ground him. They don't know what they've done. No one would believe a cornered species could ever fight back. 2 Thrax guards shoved him toward the teleportation ring. In seconds, he was gone. Returned to the burned blue orbit of Earth, to a planet left to rot. But Earth hadn't been rotting. In the 10 years of war that led to this moment, Earth had been reforged. Back on the ground, the cities still glowed red with the scars of old orbital bombardments. But now, shattered skyscrapers held rail cannons on their roofs. A network of artificial moons blinked in perfect sequence across the sky, human-made sentinels watching the stars. Earth had stopped begging for help. It had started building. The resistance that rose during the blockade wasn't built on hope. It was built on pure, concentrated fury. When the conglomerate turned its back, humanity turned to itself. Underground labs churned out tech that made old Terran weapons look like children's toys. AI systems, once banned by interstellar treaty, were now training soldiers in millions of virtual combat simulations. Children learned to pilot strike craft before they learned to drive cars. By the time they hit 14, they could run a fleet engagement simulation with a 70% success rate. Designate 7, now known only as Commander Valerius Kane, stepped out of the reentry pod. He looked across the blackened skyline of New Boston. The air tasted of metal and resolve. A young officer rushed up to him, saluting sharply. "Commander, it's done. The Purgatory Fleet is fully operational." "How many?" Kane asked, his voice raw. 39 Revenant-class dreadnoughts, sir. All awaiting your orders." Kane didn't blink. "Good. We leave tonight." The conglomerate thought exile was a punishment. They never understood what happens when you corner a predator. They had exiled Earth. But Earth wasn't coming back for acceptance. It was coming to dominate. 8. The Purgatory Fleet hovered in Earth's exosphere like steel ghosts waiting to pounce. 39 dreadnoughts. Hulking, angular beasts bristling with energy lances and plasma cannons. Each bore the new insignia of Earth, a broken chain overlaid with a burning planet. Commander Kane stood on the command bridge of the Oblivion, the lead dreadnought. The interior was as brutal and functional as the man himself. Gray alloy walls, no unnecessary comforts, just war-focused design. Tactical displays showed star charts and surveillance data from thousands of long-range drones spread across the system. He stared at a hologram of conglomerate territory. "They think we're isolated," Kane muttered. Lieutenant Harlan, his second-in-command, nodded grimly. "They have no idea, sir. The blockade made us smarter. Meaner. Good." Kane's jaw clenched. "That means we can hit them harder." The conglomerate had forced humanity into a corner and left it to die. What they didn't expect was that human resilience wasn't powered by hope. It was fueled by vengeance. The moment the blockade was official, humanity did what it always did when faced with extinction. It adapted, it evolved, and it prepared. No more petty nations, no more borders. Humanity became a single war machine under the brutal efficiency of the Ascendancy Pact, Earth's new military government. Scientists once focused on civilian tech were redirected to weapons research. Education was replaced with training. Kane opened the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice echoed through every dreadnought, every corridor, every heart that had survived the long exile. "This is not a mission of war. This is a message written in blood." He paused, letting the words sink in. The conglomerate believed they could erase us, that they could exile us into silence. But we have returned. Not with words, but with steel, fire, and fury. We are humanity, and we do not forget. A wave of guttural cheers erupted through the comms. The sound of soldiers who had waited too long and lost too much. The first strike was calculated. A minor planet called Xylos 9. It served as a conglomerate military depot, far from the core worlds, manned mostly by Thrax troopers and Zoran bureaucrats. It wasn't a capital. It was a statement. When the Purgatory fleet arrived, they didn't open negotiations. They didn't send diplomats. They deployed orbital bombardment followed by surgical strike teams. Human Marines in black adaptive armor stormed the surface, moving with terrifying efficiency. Kane watched the battle unfold from orbit, every transmission logged, every death recorded. Within 4 hours, Xylos 9 was dust and ash. The fleet's AI uploaded the footage to every known interstellar data stream. A warning wrapped in the footage of absolute destruction. The message was simple. Earth doesn't forget. And now, we do not forgive. The conglomerate convened in panic. The Grand Convocation Hall, once filled with smug indifference, was now chaos. The Vlach Dominion's ambassador slammed its skeletal limb against the floor. "This is an act of annihilation. Earth has declared war." "No," said the Zoran envoy, its voice trembling. "They've declared judgment." Fear rippled through them, not just because of what Earth had done, but how fast it had been done. The blockade was meant to cripple them. Somehow, humanity had built a war machine from the ruins. Humanity hadn't just survived exile. It had thrived in it. The conglomerate's response was not long in coming. Their silence wasn't fear. It was preparation. Lieutenant Harlan entered the bridge, his face pale. "Sir," intercepted comms from Zoran Prime. Coded at the highest level. "They've released something." "Something?" Kane turned slowly. "A unit designation we haven't seen in a century, sir. Code name: Chimera Strain." That name rang like a blade unsheathed in Kane's memory. A ghost project from the old archives, designed not for war, but for extinction. Bioengineered entities. Neither machine nor flesh. Grown in deep cryo vats on forbidden moons. Weapons too powerful to control. The conglomerate only used them when faced with annihilation. And now, they thought humanity qualified. Within days, human forward outposts began to vanish. No alarms. No distress calls. Just silence. Recon teams found ships turned inside out, crew members dissected mid-stride. No laser burns, no kinetic damage, just shredded metal and melted bulk heat. DS. One transmission survived. A final, fractured clip from a scout named Eva. "Don't move like anything I've seen." No engines, they phase through the hull. No, not teleport, they shift, like space bends for them. We fired full plasma, didn't even slow them. I saw Brooks scream, then nothing, just gone. The audio cut with a high-pitched screech, like steel grinding through bone. Kane watched the footage in silence, alone. General Toma, an old war hound with cybernetics riddling his skull, stormed onto the bridge. "We need to pull back, Kane." We're not fighting ships anymore. These are exterminators. No, Kane said, his voice flat as Durasteel. We hold the line. You don't hold against Chimera. You run, you regroup, and you pray they burn themselves out. Kane turned, his eyes cold. Earth didn't crawl out of the grave to play defense. We will fight this. Within 2 weeks, 10 human colonies were erased. Not conquered. Erased. The data left behind showed bizarre energy patterns and gravitational anomalies. Even our combat AIs, trained on millions of simulations, shut themselves down when confronted with Chimera data. Panic returned to Earth. Children weren't training anymore. They were hiding. Kane knew the tide had turned. The conglomerate had broken their own laws by using the Chimera strain. That was their weakness. He called an emergency war council. They brought demons to a knife fight. Kane began. So we exposed them. He pointed to a planet on the map. Tartarus V. A black site. Uncharted. Surveillance drones showed Chimera energy trails leading to and from it. We take the fight into their hidden labs. We show the galaxy what the conglomerate is willing to do to maintain power. They'll turn on each other. It was madness. It was their only chance. Kane led the strike team himself. Tartarus V was a dead world of black ice and dust storms. They breached the single buried facility at midnight cycle. Inside was a nightmare. The corridors weren't built. They were grown. Organic walls pulsed faintly with light, lined with twisted metal. Human bodies were stitched into the walls, some still alive, screaming without mouths. They encountered the Chimera entities for the first time. They didn't walk. They unfolded, like watching physics collapse in real time. Faces with no symmetry. Voices that sounded like thousands whispering at once. Half the team died in minutes. But Kane got to the core. He found the birthing chamber. A throne of bone, flesh, and machinery. And at its heart, something not even the conglomerate's darkest records had described. A Terran child, barely 8 years old, floating in a stasis field. Eyes pitch black, veins glowing blue. The Chimera brain core. They had taken Earth's genetics during the exile. They had created a hybrid. A message. You wanted war. A mechanical voice whispered through the walls. You wanted domination. You are now part of the machine. Kane did the only thing he could. He overloaded the facility's fusion cores. As the team scrambled to escape, he saw one last thing. The child opened its eyes and smiled. Not a Chimera smile. A human one. The blast from Tartarus V was visible across 3 star systems. For a few hours, the galaxy went quiet. Kane returned to the oblivion a changed man. The man who had rallied Earth with pure defiance now looked hollowed out from within. He walked straight to the central console and initiated a secure channel to the Ascendancy Council on Earth. Tartarus is gone, Kane said, his voice empty. But it's not over. He displayed the last image he saw. Those black eyes and that haunting, human smile. There was a child, he said. Human. Engineered as the Chimera core. They didn't just weaponize monsters. They used us to do it. The implication hit the War Council like a thunderstrike. The conglomerate hadn't feared human destruction. They feared human ascension. And to prevent it, they had tried to twist evolution itself. The war was no longer about vengeance. It was about identity. The survival of the true human line. Then came the message from the Mars orbital relay. A scrambled signal. Not from the conglomerate. Not from Earth. From the child. You made me to survive. They made me to conquer. I belong to neither. I am what comes next. The voice pattern was a perfect hybrid. Terran bass with unknown, chilling modulations. The child hadn't died. It had escaped, and it was learning. Kane ordered a classified operation, Ghost Hunt. A single, untraceable stealth ship, the Wraith. 6 hand-picked veterans. No AI. Total isolation. Their mission, track the child, contain it, and if necessary, end it. It wasn't vengeance anymore. It was mercy. They tracked its energy trail to a graveyard sector, RAL 9. An abandoned mining station choked in vines of synthetic, pulsing tissue. There, etched into flesh-grown steel, was a message in perfect Terran script. I am not your enemy, but you will make me one. Deeper inside, they found a terminal. It showed the child was replicating its mind, broadcasting brainwave echoes and memory fragments across old comms networks. Then, the panels lit up with images. Flashes of old Earth. Bombed cities, famine, executions, and Kane. On a battlefield, covered in blood, lifting a crying girl from rubble. The screen zoomed in on the girl's face. Black eyes, blue veins. The child. It had recorded him. From the very beginning. It had imprinted on him. The trail led them to the cradle void, a dead zone in space where no signals escaped. At its center was a single structure, a sphere of living metal half a moon wide, orbiting nothing. The Genesis Arkansas, the Chimera's true womb. Inside, they found rows of stasis pods. Hundreds of them. And inside each pod a child. Human-shaped, but wrong. Perfect symmetry. Blue veins glowing faintly. This was a species farm. Then the lights came on. In the center, on a raised pedestal, stood the child. No longer small, now appearing adolescent, calm, unarmed. You came, it said, its voice both boy and girl. Why? Cain asked, his weapon lowered. Why build this? Because you taught me war, and they taught me survival, the child replied. Now I will teach the galaxy evolution. You'll be stopped, Cain said. The child looked almost sad. Then you haven't understood. I don't want to kill you. I want to inherit you. The chamber began to shake. Not from an attack. From an awakening. One by one, the children in the pods opened their eyes. All at once. Hundreds of them. Staring. Aware. Cain's finger hovered over the trigger. Every instinct screamed at him to fire. Then, one of the children, a little girl, stepped forward. She looked up at him, her face showing no fear. Why are you afraid? She asked, her voice innocent. We remember you. You saved us. They remembered his memories. Seeded into them by the core. They weren't just clones. They believed he was their savior. He turned to his team, his voice tight. Abort the strike. Sir, his comms officer choked. Stand down. They left the Ark without a single shot fired. As the Wraith pulled away, the cradle folded itself back into the void, as if it had never been there. Cain returned to a broken Earth, now a traitor in the eyes of his own government for failing to destroy the Chimera threat. But the conglomerate, learning of the Ark's location, launched their own final solution, a planet-killer bomb, the Golgotha, designed to collapse the cradle's coordinates into a singularity. Cain didn't hesitate. He took the Oblivion and intercepted the conglomerate dreadnought carrying the weapon. This is Commander Cain of the Terran Purgatory Fleet, he broadcast. You are carrying an unregulated extinction-class device. Abort your mission or we will disable your vessel. The conglomerate captain laughed. You are a disgraced outcast. We do not negotiate with aberrations. The battle was short and brutal. As the conglomerate ship launched the Golgotha, Cain ordered a full-thrust intercept. The Oblivion screamed through space, its hull groaning. Plasma disruptors launched. The first two missed. The third struck the missile's core. A silent, brilliant explosion tore through the void. The Golgotha was gone. The Ark was safe. But the Oblivion was crippled by return fire. Cain was declared a traitor by Earth. His name erased. He made his way back to the cradle. The child, now appearing as a young adult, met him. You stopped them, it said. For now, Cain replied, weary. They'll be back. It's a cycle. Then we break it. What will you do now? The child asked. You've betrayed them all. Cain looked around the chamber, at the hum of energy, at the whisper of futures being built. I'll stay here, he said. Teach. Warn. Help you avoid becoming what we did. You would lead us? No, Cain said. You don't need another leader. You need a mistake. Someone to remind you. What not to become. Years passed. A final alliance of the conglomerate and a vengeful Earth, the Purity Accord, amassed a fleet of thousands to burn the new civilization from existence. They incinerated peaceful Helix-born colonies without warning. The Helix-born, with Cain's guidance, did not retaliate in kind. Instead, the Genesis Ark opened, and from it emerged a sphere of living light, an energy lattice built from their collective consciousness. It was not a weapon. It was a mirror. It reflected their war back at them. Every ship, every soldier, every lie. The fleet didn't fire. Every ship's AI shut down. Not by hacking. By choice. The Accord's soldiers wept as they saw, for the first time, what they had become. The fleet retreated in surrender. The war ended not with a bang, but with understanding. Valerius Cain died 3 years later. Quietly, staring at the stars. The child, now fully matured, delivered his eulogy. This is the last man who chose to remember the pain, when it would have been easier to forget. He gave us a choice. His body was not buried. It was converted into memory. The Helix-born stored his essence. not to worship, but to learn. They called it the fossil archive, a library of failure, a permanent warning, so they would never forget where they came from. The Helix-born, with Cain's guidance, did not retaliate in kind. Instead, the Genesis arc opened, and from it emerged a sphere of living light, an energy lattice built from their collective consciousness. It was not a weapon. It was a mirror. It reflected their war back at them. Every ship, every soldier, every lie. The fleet didn't fire. Every ship's AI shut down. Not by hacking, by choice. The Accord soldiers wept as they saw, for the first time, what they had become. The fleet retreated in surrender. The war ended not with a bang, but with understanding. Valerius Cain died 3 years later, quietly, staring at the stars. The child, now fully matured, delivered his eulogy. This is the last man who chose to remember the pain, when it would have been easier to forget. He gave us a choice. His body was not buried. It was converted into memory. The Helix-born stored his essence, not to worship, but to learn. They called it the fossil archive, a library of failure, a permanent warning, so they would never forget where they came from. The Helix-born, with Cain's guidance, did not retaliate in kind. Instead, the Genesis arc opened, and from it emerged a sphere of living light, an energy lattice built from their collective consciousness. It was not a weapon. It was a mirror. It reflected their war back at them. Every ship, every soldier, every lie. The fleet didn't fire. Every ship's AI shut down. Not by hacking, by choice. The Accord soldiers wept as they saw, for the first time, what they had become. The fleet retreated in surrender. The war ended not with a bang, but with understanding. Valerius Cain died 3 years later, quietly, staring at the stars. The child, now fully matured, delivered his eulogy. This is the last man who chose to remember the pain, when it would have been easier to forget. He gave us a choice. His body was not buried. It was converted into memory. The Helix-born stored his essence, not to worship, but to learn. They called it the fossil archive, a library of failure, a permanent warning, so they would never forget where they came from.